This video is just an idea to share an idea for a spice rack that I just built for my wife. We had this cabinet in the corner of our kitchen that we always store our spices in, but the trouble is it's just really unorganized. We buy our spices from an Amish store, and they come in little plastic containers, and we just stack them in the closet. And then anytime you need anything, you have to go digging through and, basically pull everything out, and it's just completely unorganized. So I decided to just make a spice rack to try to organize a whole cabinet for my wife. I started out by I got some 26-inch slides like I used on the drawers below, and I started out with a 2x2 block of ash that I decided to be the main mount for my bottom slides. And, there you can see these little cutoffs. These are what go down in my saw, and they actually block the sawdust from going out to small tubes. So you have to, constantly be cleaning them out with the Grizzly 1023 saw. But I cut the 2x2 to the proper length for the cabinet, and then I went back and decided to mount the two slides onto it. There you can see I'm just using those little tabs that stick out and putting screws into them. So just in case it's not perfectly aligned, there will be some flex allowable in the system just to make everything move smoothly. So this block will be mounted in the bottom of the cabinet and allow the spice rack to pull out. I had thought about putting the slides vertically, but I figured they'd be strongest in this configuration here. So basically, there's how the slides will mount in the cabinet. Then I have to go back and cut a couple pieces for both sides for the moving segment of the slides. And these will actually be attached to the bottom of the spice rack to allow it to pull out. And there you can see the burns that I get from that Frood Premier Fusion blade. And I really don't like that blade for ripping, but, I don't always take it out and change it out. So here we have it. These are the two side pieces that the cabinet, the spice rack will mount on. And they are mounted to the other removable part of the slide. And that's basically how it's going to work. Now, I had to do a little planing on some of the parts, and as you probably saw, my planer went up in smoke the last video, so I replaced the 3 horsepower motor on it with one that runs half the speed. So the planer actually only runs about 6 foot per minute now. So it took me a long time just to take a fine cut off these remaining boards. But so here it is, just I planed them and then joined them, and now just ripping them to the correct width to build the actual spice rack itself. And this was some of that wood that I had started out drying a couple months ago to build the pull-out shelves with that I just did too. So here you can see, they putting that little plug in the front of the saw to help the airflow really has helped to eliminate the sawdust coming out the top of the saw, especially when you have the guard in place. So, that seems to have helped a little bit. Then, after cutting the parts, I needed a way to keep the jars actually from moving around and falling out when you pulled this rack in and out. So what I decided to do was go over to the CNC router and just program up some pockets that each of the jars would fit into. Now I decided to use some of those ball quilted jelly jars, the 8-ounce and 12-ounce sizes, because that's basically the perfect size for the little plastic containers that we get from our Amish store. And so here it is, just this is just cutting out the little pockets on the router just to keep the jars positioned properly. Now, I mean, you could easily do something like this with probably a big Forstner bit or even a template with a handheld router. I just did it this way because it's, quick and easy for me to do. It's actually fun to watch the machine work too. And that little DeWalt router that I put on this last year actually has been really holding up well. I'm really surprised. I've got a couple 100 hours on it so far, and no problems with it yet. So I've been real happy with that purchase. And there you can see, you just take a couple passes of it, and you know, there's those little rubber band clamps that I made. I did a video about a while ago, and this is just how easy it makes to swap out parts when you're routing them. So they just kind of lock it in place, and you know, are easy to change out. Then I put a stop on my table saw, as you can see there, so I could go back and cut all the parts of all the shelves of the cabinet and the top and bottom sections to the proper width of it, you know, the cabinet. And there's kind of just stacking up what it's going to look like. You can see the pockets that the jars fit down in, and there'll be a little space there so you can get the jars in and out later, but you know, that's what it's going to look like. And then it's back to work on the sides of the cabinet. I put that Infinity dado set in my saw, and that thing, that's just been a wonderful addition to my shop. It does just such a clean cut, and it just is so easy to get the proper width of your cut with the shims that they give you with it and stuff too. So I've been real happy with that one. So, you know, it's just a matter of putting some stops on the fence and moving it and allowing me to get the proper locations on both sides of the sides so all the shelves line up perfect. And there you can see the dado that really does throw a lot of sawdust out too, and I think that's caused, you know, by that plastic guard around the blade down there, and hopefully I can open that up and put a bigger hose on it someday. But it seems like, you know, that putting that plug in the front of the cabinet did help a lot. So here we are, just, you know, kind of showing how everything's going to go together. Now I have to go back and use the dado set to cut out some rabbets all around the two sides and the top and the bottom piece of the cabinet, just to allow a piece of 1/4-inch plywood to go in there for the back of the cabinet. So the blade was a little bit, I had to set up a little bit narrower than what I needed, so I had to actually make 2 passes to get the correct width. And there you can see just how snugly that Infinity dado set fits on the arbor. And those little plastic spacers are a little bit of a pain to get off once you use them, but they really do help set the you know, the width of the groove. And everything just fits on there so precise, and it gives you such a flat bottomed slot that I've been, you know, really happy with the overall performance of this so far. There you see, it does take a little bit of fiddling to get those plastic spacers off, because they kind of have a tendency to get caught in the threads. And you know, it's nice to have that cabinet that I built right next to the saw, just to be able to, you know, store it away, and, you know, everything stays in good condition. So this is, you know, basically what it looks like, all just held together now, and time to do a little sanding. And I have this fan that I put these filters on, and the one in it was plugged up. What I do is I go to Home Depot and I just buy these guys here. They're a cheap filter. They're only rated for dust and lint and airborne dust, but they seem to do a good job. And when they get full like that, you just slide the old filter out and just make sure you put that grid towards the fan blades. And then you just slide the new filter in, and you're ready to go. And basically, you know, when you're sanding, it does, if you set that fan right next to where you're working, it does pick up really a great deal of the sawdust that's being you know, put out by the sander. So here we are, just doing a rough sanding before we do the assembly, trying to clean everything up a little bit, and you know, get it ready for the final assembly. There's all the parts, and I started by gluing one of the sides for the slide onto the bottom. Okay, there's all the parts for this now. And there you can see where I glued one of the sides for the slide on the bottom of the rack, and the other one actually has to be removable just in case you ever have to get in there and service a slide or replace it later. It'd be really tough to get the screws out and get everything lined up properly if you had them both glued in place. So now it's back to starting to do glue up on the rack. So I did it in a couple steps. I actually glued all the parts into one side basically, let the glue dry, and clamped everything up, made sure it was good and square. You can see here. And then I let that dry for a couple of minutes, and then I just went back and I glued everything back on the other side, as you'll see in a second. And when you're doing glue ups like this, it's just amazing how many clamps you actually need all the time. But so that's basically the first set of glue up with one side, and then here I am. I'm just doing the final glue together here. And I like to use that. I use that Type Bond 3 on basically everything that I make because it seems to work good for me. It's got long enough time for me to assemble everything before it sets up, and I've had good luck with it over the years, so I've been sticking with that. And like I've said before, those little silicone brushes are just amazing to use for glue ups because you can spread the glue on them, then you just set them aside, let them dry overnight, and the next day you just pull all the dried glue off and you're ready to go again. So there it is. That's pretty much what the spice rack is going to look like. It's got 4 shelves of jars, and like I said, I made sure that I made it to go for the 12-ounce size jars on the top, and then a couple of smaller 8-ounce jars on the bottom. And it's just a simple shelf built up and glued together. And like I've said before, this is just an idea for a spice rack that I built in. It could really be adapted to many other situations and look completely different than this, but this is how mine came out. Now once I got that all glued up, I went back, and this is the other removable slide side that I had to drill some holes through it in order to allow the mounting screws to go up from the bottom so it could easily be removed later. So the first thing I did is I just drilled through, and then whenever I need a counterbore, I use the Craig drill bit with that step drill, which is really easy to line up and just place a counterbore in a piece so that I can bury my screw head up in it and get the hole screwed to the correct length for assembly. So this is just placing a couple counterbores, and there they are, and the screw just come up from the bottom and go into the bottom of the rack. Now after I got everything glued up, I decided to just throw some screws in just to give it a little bit of extra strength. You never know if somebody's going to grab onto it. So these screws have got like little wings on the bottom that actually cut their own countersink in there. So you just have to drill some clearance holes, and then they go in there and they just do a real clean job at countersinking. And I've had good luck with them. Then for the top of it, I decided to put one of those plastic drawer glides. Here it is, one of those plastic drawer glides that goes on a T-shaped piece. So I cut a couple pieces, and I could have made it from one piece, but I just decided to glue up 2 pieces because that's what I had laying around available. So here it is. We're screwing that other side onto the bottom of the cabinet now. Kind of starting to do the final assembly here. And you can see how when this is all put together, the slides will be completely hidden. Then it's time to go back and do a little bit of final sanding and clean up. Make sure they get all the glue off the joint wherever it is, and just make sure everything's perfectly flush. And then I just took a 1/8 of an inch router round over bit just to break the edges on the front, so there'd be no real sharp edges or anything there. So there it is, just, putting a little round over on it. And then after that, I just went back and I did, a little more sanding on it, kind of like a final sanding. And there was also a little bit of hand sanding required to clean up all those rounds and stuff. But, there it is, just sanding it, getting it ready to finish. And before I put the back on, I decided to put the first coat of this water-based polyurethane on everything. I really don't like the water-based finish, but it's nice that there's no smell and it's dry in about a half an hour. So there's the back piece also that's all cut out now to fit in the back of the cabinet. And, I'm just putting first coat of polyurethane on that before assembly. Just in case anything shrinks or moves later, there'll be no, unfinished edges. So with that first coat dry, I'm just going to, lay the back in there. And I put some tape with some marks on the center of the shelf so I could just staple it together. And then I just used a piece of wood between them to, guide everything and make sure that I hit the shelf with the staples. So there it is, all put together basically. And I mean, you can see it's just a simple, very simple pull-out shelf. So the next thing I was doing is on the back of the shelf, I'm putting a 2-foot square cork board, or just about, well, it's a little bit over 2 foot square, but I had some cork tiles left over from the flooring job that I did, so I used that. And I find that the best way to cut that stuff and get a nice clean sharp edge on it is with the table saw. So here I am just cutting the pieces to size, and it's going to take 3 of the tiles to do this this back of this cabinet, but basically that's how it's going in. And then I had some this is a water-based contact adhesive that I've been using for the cork, and that seems to work out pretty good. So you start by putting a coat of the adhesive on the plywood back there, and then on the back of each of the cork tiles. And it takes maybe about half an hour or so that you put this stuff on, and then you let it set up until it's just tacky and it's not wet, real wet and slimy anymore. So once it's tacky, you can just put the parts together. And you have to be kind of careful when you lay it down, because you can't always move it once it contacts. So sometimes you can shift it a little bit, but for the most part, it's it stays where you put it. So you have to be real careful and try to get the edges tight together there. And if you do get some contact cement on the surface like that, just take a damp cloth, and seeing how it's water based, it does come right off. So I had made a mistake, and let some drip over the front. And once you put that on, just go over it with a one of those Formica J rollers, just to make sure everything is seated properly. And then just to finish it off around the edges, I decided to just take a couple of ash strips, cut some small strips, and then just use some pin nails to hold everything in place. Now with all the the cork installed on the back, I went back and to put the second and final coat of the polyurethane on the cabinet, and also I put a coat of polyurethane on that cork there just to give it a little extra protection. And then I went up, and there's that T-track that I made for guiding the top of this cabinet to keep it from moving and stuff. And then there's the base for the slides that goes in the bottom. I decided it was easiest to drill up, put some screws up from the bottom of the cabinet to mount that bottom piece in there. So I drilled some holes first. Then I just kind of got everything in and took a couple measurements and got everything basically, lined up so it moved smoothly and it was exactly where I want it. And I just went back and put some of those Craig screws up from the bottom. I like to use those things for basically everything. They seem to be a real good strong screw, and they have a nice big washer head. And then I lined up that top guide and went back and I put a couple of screws in there just to hold that. And that's just a little extra protection in case anybody grabs onto it and tries to yank it sideways or anything. So there it is. It's basically how it's going to pull in and out of the cabinet. And that's how the jars are going to sit in those little pockets. And, it keeps them pretty much in place when you go in and out. Keeps them from moving around and falling out. So there's the back side of it. When you pull it out, I actually have a, it's kind of like a big bulletin board there by our phone, so we can just stick notes and stuff on it and push them in out of the way so you won't see them later. So next I wanted to put the door back on. So what I did is I took some of that double-sided tape, that real sticky stuff, and I just put a strip across the bottom and the top of the spice rack there. And then I clamped a couple pieces of wood on and put some tape on so I could get everything aligned properly to get that right, back where it belongs on the cabinet, basically. And then just push the rack out against it. And the double-sided tape basically holds everything in place until you get your hardware, your screws put in. And there it is. I had a couple of holes I had drilled in the bottom to allow me to put some screws in from the, the back side there. So basically it still, looks like a cabinet now, but yet the whole thing pulls out. And then I needed a couple screws on the top, and what I did is I took my Craig jig and just clamped it in place and, drilled a couple of pocket holes in the top there. And there's that just one of little portable jigs. And so now the door was really held on good, and it makes a real good handle for pulling it in and out. Then I went back down to my shop, and I'm not going through all the the steps to making this, but this is just a plywood box that I made to go in front of that cabinet to give me some more shelf space. And basically it's all made out of plywood. I've got 1/2-inch plywood for the shelves and the sides, and everything was basically put together with dados and glue. And my back piece of plywood was a little bit short, so as you can see there, I had to glue another piece on to make that up and fill that in. And there it is. Basically there's the spice rack, pulls out alongside of it, and there's the shelves that fill in the front of it. Now I put some pieces of ash trim on the front of the shelves while it was, in place there, so I could locate them properly. Then I took it back down to my shop and decided to stain it to kind of match the cabinets. So it's got, one coat of stain, and then I let it sit overnight, and then I went back and I put 2 coats of that polyurethane on it. And then same thing on the side. I had a little filler piece to go in there where the spice rack fits. And I decided to put another small piece of cork on there to make just a small cork board to be able to, pin some little things on. So it's basically the same thing as before. I spread some of that adhesive on it, that water-based adhesive. Let it sit and dry. Put the cork on, and then just kind of roll it down. And get it on there good and tight, and then go back and put some polyurethane on it. And there we have it. Everything's all finished and ready to be installed now. Here we are back up there, and I had to pull the spice rack out to get this in. So this just slid right in there, but in front of the spice rack. I pre-drilled a couple of holes for mounting it, and first thing I did is I placed the 3 screws on one side. Luckily the cabinet and everything was really nice and square, and it fit together good. And then this is that little cork board that goes in the other side. I just had to flex out a little bit, and I just left enough clearance so it would slide in behind these screws and kind of hold everything together. So after that was in, I put the other screws in and everything was mounted. And just a matter of getting the spice rack back in place. Yeah, it took a little bit of fiddling to get everything aligned, and the first time in is hard until the ball rollers get in the proper place on the slides. But then after that, it comes out really nice and easy. And there you can see it. It's really easy to pull out, and I still have some shelves in front of it there, which I can put all the odds and ends on. There they are. And so next I picked up some of the ball canning jars, the Quilted jelly jars, and some of those plastic lids for them also that Ball sells to put all the spices in. And then I just took my computer and I laid out some labels, and I cut them on. I actually printed them on some label paper, then put a spray clear coat on top of them. And then after that was done, I went back with a pair of scissors and cut them all out, which was kind of time consuming, but they didn't come out too bad. And there you have it. I got all the jars labeled, mounted in there. Basically got all my wife's spices in there now. I wish I had room for about 6 more jars, but we got the most of them in there, and they're all real easy to get at now. And when you push it in, they're in a complete darkness, so there'll be no sunlight or anything getting at them. And these 12-ounce jars worked out really good for the most part. And some of the smaller packages we use the 8-ounce for, but real happy how it came out. And there's that little bulletin board right next to the pull-out that gets hidden for, just sticking little things on. And, basically, so this is just an idea I thought I'd share with you. My wife's real happy with the outcome, and it does make everything very easy to find. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.